Yujiro Hanma is notorious for how much he's glazed. While he is incredibly strong within the Baki verse, but how strong is he if we actually take all those statements at face value? Sure, even though there are some crazy statements about him, a lot of them are clearly metaphorical or hyperbolic. But what if they're all facts? Well, if they were, then he's way stronger than you'd think. So let's start off by giving a baseline of Yujiro's actual power. I've calculated this in previous videos, and I'm not going to be going in depth with this, both because I've covered it already, and this video is meant to glaze him anyway, so it's not really important if I'm 100% accurate right now, because we just want to compare this baseline to the glaze statements. In previous videos, I've placed him at around large city to small mountain level with massively hypersonic speed. Pretty respectable, but he gets mogged by a lot of other characters in Shonen. While he is a menace in his own verse, he's actually pretty weak in comparison to a lot of other characters. But hey, at least he's a good matchup for JJK. Not much else though. The weird thing is, even though a lot of people joke about how much the narrator hypes up Yujiro, when you take all these at face value, it is actually as insane as the jokes say. So, what types of statements are made about him? And which ones are the wildest? Now, let's go through every piece of glaze we could find. These are going to be any statements I could see that are hyperbolic, embellished, basically any statement that would push him way beyond where he reasonably should be. And maybe from some of these statements we could actually do some extra scaling on top of that. The biggest one that immediately comes to mind for me is the statement that Yujiro is stronger than any military, country, or weapon in existence. Now, I actually buy into this one because it's constantly stated, and Yujiro, as well as his father, fought entire militaries alone. However, one thing to keep in mind is collateral damage is also a concern for the government, so when they say nuclear weapons can't be used against Yujiro, it's partially because it's not really the best idea to nuke someone who's in the middle of a populated city. But let's take that at complete face value and assume that Yujiro surpasses the total might of any country. We'll go into the scaling for that later, we're just going to go over the rest of the feats right now. But in terms of strength, he has a ton of other random statements too. Nothing I could find that's beyond this though. Of course, all those blanket statements saying things like he's the strongest life form, everything on Earth is weaker than him, and he's the pinnacle of physical force. But surprisingly, none of these would serve to scale his physical strength too high, at least based on the statements alone. That military statement is still probably the highest I could find, and we'll go into the math a little later. Everything else just compares him to pretty earthly things. But that's just for his physical power. What about speed? Because this is where the real glaze kicks in, and with his abilities too. So as for speed, for one, Baki himself had a few crazy hyperbolic statements that, of course, would upscale Yujiro. That's another thing, a good chunk of this video will also be looking at other people's feats which serve to upscale Yujiro as the strongest. For example, for Baki, he has a jab that was apparently light speed, or near instant acceleration akin to a cockroach, and apparently speed that surpasses the concept of speed, whatever that means. So this is well beyond the lightning speed that we usually give Yujiro at his baseline. Being above Baki, who jabs at light speed with that glaze statement, Yujiro then becomes light speed or higher. But with that really badly formatted scan that says Baki surpasses the concept of speed, then Yujiro has irrelevant speed. Damn. This is also a good time to mention that getting a lot of these statements to be accurate is tough, to say the least. Baki is notorious for having a myriad of mistranslations and bad scans. I know it's eventually going to have an official English release pretty soon, which is pretty cool, but until then, I'm just going to have to embrace these. Some aren't even completely inaccurate, and for a glazing video, I think that kind of helps in a funny way, especially because we could double this as a video that looks at common misconceptions and mistranslations, while at the same time using those crazy mistranslations and misconceptions to further embolden the glaze. So, yeah, irrelevant speed Baki. And Yujiro, why not? Not actually, obviously. Also, there are statements like this that say he has bottomless physical capacity, though this one in particular is based on Baki's version of Elon Musk saying it, so take that judgment as you will. Though, it's at least pretty consistent with what everyone else says about Yujiro, so maybe in this case Elon's right. In terms of abilities or just statements about him, here's the most relevant ones I found. I guarantee I'm missing some because nearly every statement about him is glaze. For one, he's constantly growing, and the Hanma bloodline has infinite potential for growth and potentially infinite strength. He can copy any ability after seeing it once and improve it. And on top of that, he can adapt to any fighting style, even if it's one he hasn't seen before, or, in one case, a style that is completely original and unused by anyone else. He's immune to any disease. Alongside surpassing disease, he also surpasses time? I guess that just means his age, but it's funny to give him a Jiren-ass statement like this. He can instantly find anyone's sickness or weak points just by looking at them. Some granola type shit. He has a divine presence. His birth was, quote, the worst day on Earth, and it made every country on Earth prepare nukes. And he also willed his own birth. He was tested by God with lightning. He has extrasensory awareness that covers the entire Earth because he could sense Baki all the way from Africa while Baki's in Japan. People fear him by just being near him, down to a cellular level they react. He could redistribute pain to negate it. Baki can imagine things into reality, and Yujiro can do the same as well. How far this goes we can't know for sure, but if he could truly imagine anything, that's subjective reality, at least limited. Like Baki imagines Blade cutting his hand and actually gets cut by it, or he has fights with imaginary characters that can injure him. Yujiro and Baki have imagined things that spectators could see before too, so it's not just them seeing it. Baki also has instinctive action to a degree, like it's actually described as his body moving automatically on instinct, another Dragon Ball-esque power. Yujiro can remove someone's soul or consciousness by shaking them. And those are just a few that I could find, but if you're enjoying the video so far, drop a like and drop some hype points too. It really does help the channel, and if you want to see more like this, consider subscribing. Now, let's actually calculate his Glaze power. And in case it's not clear already, this will not be an accurate scale of Yujiro. I can already see people in the comments thinking this is serious, but the point of this is to show how unserious the Glaze is. How far is he wanked if everything is taken literally at face value? Well, to start, Yujiro is stronger than any weapon. This scales him over the Tsar Bomba, the strongest bomb ever, which is what I used to get his baseline strength originally. But it says he's above every country, and all of their weapons. So let's take the military with the most nukes, as these are the most powerful weapons, obviously. That makes it easier to scale. And if you think the feat of him stopping an earthquake is impressive, well, it is. But with this we could scale him even beyond that. The largest arsenal would be Russia's. Current estimates put Russia's nuke arsenal at 4,309, or up to 5,459 when including retired nukes, and since Russia isn't exactly transparent, for all we know this estimate is far higher. For comparison, the US's estimate is around 5,177. Again, probably not the most transparent either, so we don't know how true this is. Actually, that kind of goes for every government, so take all these numbers with a grain of salt. We can't be truly sure what government has what amount of nukes because no one's just going to outright say, oh yeah, we have this many nukes. Anyways, 1,718 nukes are strategic, and 2,591 are in reserve, and the remaining 1,150 are retired. Retired nukes are simply nukes that will be scrapped or refurbished, but to balance it out, let's assume all could be used, but we'll say they're weaker than non-strategic nukes. Strategic nukes equal anywhere from 100 kilotons to 1 megaton worth of TNT, while non-strategic nukes range from a fraction of a kiloton to 50 kilotons, so averaged out that's about 500 kilotons and 25 kilotons respectively. So doing some simple multiplications, 500 times 1,718 equals 859,000. Then we take 25 times 3,741, and that's 93,525. Adding those together, we get a total of 952,525 kilotons, which equals 952.5 megatons or 0.95 gigatons. That means 0.95 gigatons of TNT can't kill Yujiro. His attack power and durability scales above this. Let's round it up to 1 gigaton for simplicity. And this doesn't include any other ordnance that the military has. This is large mountain level, but let's use a higher end of the bomb's payloads. So that would be 1,000 times 1718 and 50 times 3741. The sum of those two is 1,905,050 kilotons, or 1.9 gigatons, and let's just round to 2 gigatons. That makes him twice as strong. But let's go higher. If we take every military's nukes together, that brings us to 4,097,100 kilotons, or 4 gigatons, twice beyond that previous figure. Okay, so even with Glaze, he's apparently large mountain level, and that's not as crazy as I expected. Even if we assumed every military upgrades their nukes to be the Tsar Bomba, which has a max payload of 100 megatons, then we get the total inventory of nukes at 12,241. Multiplying those together, that's 1,224,100 megatons, which translates to 1,224 gigatons, aka large island level. Definitely better than before, but still not as crazy as I thought. But we can go even higher. And I know some people reference the feat of all of us shaking the world, but I'm not going to count it because it's pretty easy to see that he wasn't actually shaking the world, just affecting the GPS tracking on a global scale. Like, for as much as the story glazes everybody here, I think there's a difference between the story glazing someone or people coming up with their own conclusions from mistranslations. Which is fine, I get it, but funny enough, even if you were to take that feat at face value, it's not even the highest glaze I could find. So first off, keep in mind this is all just Yujiro's base. The demon back will amplify him further. But how strong is the demon back? Well, at a baseline it's about a 3 to 5 times boost. This isn't Dragon Ball where we have multipliers, or at least easily accessible ones, so it's tough to say. And unlike Yujiro, Baki was inexperienced with it here. Because I'm basing it off of Baki, it could be varying based on plot convenience too. So, in Baki's fight with Oliva, he couldn't do anything until awakening the demon back. He went from not phasing Oliva at all to actually being able to harm him. Again, kind of tough to gauge that, but I mean, since we're highballing anyways, let's just use that 5 times estimate that I have. Especially because Yujiro is more practiced. That means 2 gigatons turn into 10 gigatons. But Baki and Yujiro have other ways to buff themselves, such as using endorphins, which double Baki's power, so With those two, it's a buff of at least 20 times. And reminder, he has other ways of amplifying his strength even further beyond this, through attacks or techniques. And this is all still based off of Baki, who isn't as experienced as Yujiro, so this is a lower end. Yujiro is now 20 gigatons, with endorphins and the demon back. That makes him island level, unless we use the UPSCALE that we used, which is a really high highball, which would put him at 24,480 gigatons worth of TNT, aka large island level. But now we get really stupid. All of that is irrelevant because I found even funnier pieces of Glaze, and that's by looking at Hanayama. He's compared to a black hole, and he's able to shift gravity based on his own glaze. I don't know how many times I've said the word glaze in this video, but I'm sure there's someone keeping count. Anyways, Hanayama is directly compared to a star with over 30 times the mass of the sun. Yes, this is the bullshit glazing I'm looking for. 2 words, Yujiro upscale. Multiply this by 20, and not even accounting for how much stronger Yujiro is than Hanayama, and we have him compared to a star with at least 600 times the sun's mass. Does that mean we have large star level Yujiro? And it says 30 plus times larger, so again, the lower end. Fuck it, let's get some Hanayama glaze going. He also beat Spec, who said he could destroy gods. Another Yujiro upscale. He punched a ghost, which gives him non-physical interaction. When Hanayama and Musashi fought, they were enveloped in a space of infinite darkness, and Hanayama moved there in an infinite dimensionless space. Again, obviously this is all just stupid to fight bullshit, but we're taking it at face value. And that means another Yujiro upscale. He can move in a timeless, spaceless void. Holy shit, throw him in the Tournament of Power. But there's more multipliers. There's Death Concentration, which allows Baki to see things at 1/5 speed. His reaction and perception speeds increase 5 times then. Let's say Baki is exactly the speed of light. And let's say Yujiro's base is 2 times Baki, which is probably not accurate but just a baseline. Again, just another ballpark estimate. Then add a 20 times multiplier. This puts Yujiro at least 40 times the speed of light. Also, for using other people's statements, Oliva could actually regenerate just by eating a bunch. Yes, this is something he really does. He just eats a bunch of meat and then he could regenerate just whatever injuries he has, I guess. Probably nothing too severe, but I would assume that Yujiro could do this too if he can. And this isn't even really wank because it's a feat we actually see. Kind of crazy though. So Yujiro is a lot faster than light. He's large star level. He could regenerate. He could box ghost and then all the other crazy stuff that I mentioned before. Of course, that's just combat and reaction speed, not travel speed. It would be funny if he actually moved that fast, though. Anyways, if we're actually going to take everything at face value, he was stated to have infinite strength from his Hanma blood, and Baki says he needs infinite strength to defeat him. And I'm sure there's other statements that I just can't find right now that involve unlimited power or infinite power, knowing the Glaze of the series. But one of these is enough. We're taking that at face value alone. So with that, Yujiro has infinite attack power and durability, making him beyond universe level. And he also surpasses the concept of speed, so he has a relevant speed. He also does surpass time, too. Holy shit. Of course, this is taking a bunch of hyperbolic statements and saying that it's actually the case here. I know I've said this a bunch during the video, but I'm sure someone is still going to be in the comments thinking that this is me seriously scaling Yujiro. But if these statements were all 100% true, not hyperbolic at all, and meant to be taken 100% seriously, then lore-accurate Yujiro is pretty fucking busted. Anyways, let me know what you think below. Were there any major Glaze statements that I missed that could push him even higher? Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.